Landon Hawthorne stepped off the train, the bustling sounds of Chicago enveloping him like a warm embrace. It was his first visit to the city, and he was filled with a mix of excitement and nervousness. He had come to spend the summer with his aunt, Serafina Vale, a renowned food blogger whose culinary skills were legendary in their family. As he made his way through the crowded station, he couldn't help but feel a sense of adventure brewing within him. Serafina's apartment was located in a charming neighborhood filled with quaint cafes and vibrant street art. The moment Landon arrived at her door, he felt a wave of nostalgia wash over him. He remembered the summers spent at her house when he was a kid, her kitchen always bustling with activity, the air thick with the aroma of spices and baked goods. He knocked on the door, and it swung open to reveal Serafina, her warm smile lighting up her face. "Landon, it's so good to see you," she exclaimed, pulling him into a tight hug. Her presence was comforting, and he felt instantly at home. "Thanks for having me, Aunt Serafina," he replied, stepping inside. The apartment was just as he remembered, cozy and filled with the rich scent of herbs and freshly baked bread. The kitchen was the heart of the home, with pots hanging from the ceiling and colorful spices neatly arranged on the shelves. After a quick tour of the apartment, Serafina led him to the kitchen. "I thought we could start our summer together by cooking something special," she said enthusiastically. "What do you feel like making?" Landon grinned, eager to impress her. "How about we try that pasta recipe you used to make? The one with all those fresh vegetables." Serafina's eyes sparkled with delight. "Great choice. Let's head to the market first to get some fresh ingredients." They made their way to a nearby farmer's market, where vibrant colors and lively chatter filled the air. Landon marveled at the array of fresh produce, plump tomatoes, fragrant basil, and crisp bell peppers. As they browsed through stalls, Serafina shared stories about her favorite vendors and how she had built her blog from scratch. "Cooking is all about passion," she explained as she selected ripe tomatoes. "It's not just about following a recipe, it's about infusing your personality into every dish." Landon listened intently, inspired by her words. He had always admired Serafina's dedication to her craft. As they gathered ingredients, he felt a sense of camaraderie blossoming between them, a bond that had grown stronger over the years. Back in the kitchen, they began preparing the meal together. Landon chopped vegetables while Serafina sautéed them in olive oil, filling the room with mouthwatering aromas. They laughed as they worked side by side, sharing playful banter that reminded Landon of his childhood. "Careful with that knife," Serafina teased as Landon fumbled slightly while chopping garlic. "Hey, I'm just trying to channel my inner chef here," he shot back with a grin. As they cooked, Landon noticed how Serafina's serious demeanor softened in the kitchen. She was passionate and animated, her laughter ringing out like music. It was infectious. He found himself relaxing more and more as they created their dish together. Once dinner was ready, they set the table on Serafina's balcony overlooking the city skyline. The sun began to set, casting a golden hue over everything around them. They clinked their glasses together in a toast, a simple celebration of their reunion. "This is delicious," Landon said after taking his first bite. "You've still got it." Serafina beamed with pride. "It's all about teamwork." As they enjoyed their meal under the fading light, Landon felt an undeniable connection forming between them, a mix of admiration and something deeper that he couldn't quite place yet. For now, he was content just being there with his aunt, sharing stories and laughter as they savored each bite. Little did they know that this summer would bring unexpected twists and turns that would forever change their relationship. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow over the space. Landon Hawthorne awoke with a sense of anticipation. Today was the day he would learn to cook one of Serafina Vale's signature dishes. He could already picture the vibrant colors and rich flavors that would fill the kitchen. After a quick breakfast, he found Serafina meticulously organizing her spices. She looked up and smiled, her hair tied back in a loose bun, a few strands framing her face. "Ready for your cooking lesson?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "Absolutely. What are we making today?" Landon replied, eager to dive in. "We're going to make ratatouille," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "It's a classic French dish that's all about fresh vegetables and herbs. It's simple but requires a bit of technique." Landon nodded, intrigued. He had always admired how Serafina could transform ordinary ingredients into something extraordinary. They gathered their supplies: zucchini, eggplant, bell peppers, tomatoes, and an array of fragrant herbs. The kitchen soon filled with the sounds of chopping and sizzling as they worked side by side. As they prepared the vegetables, Serafina explained each step in detail. The key to a good ratatouille is to cook each vegetable separately before combining them, she instructed. This way, you preserve their individual flavors. Landon listened intently, trying to absorb every piece of advice she offered. He chopped the zucchini with care, feeling a sense of pride as he began to understand the rhythm of cooking. Serafina moved gracefully around the kitchen, her movements fluid and confident. Cooking is like dancing, she said with a laugh as she twirled around him to grab a pan. You have to find your flow. He chuckled at her analogy but couldn't help but agree. There was something almost poetic about the way they moved together in the kitchen, an unspoken harmony that made the experience enjoyable. As they sautéed the vegetables one by one, Landon felt more comfortable in his role as her sous chef. They shared stories about their lives. Serafina spoke about her journey as a food blogger and how she had turned her passion into a successful career, while Landon shared tales from his recent adventures in college. Do you miss it? College life? Serafina asked as she stirred the bubbling sauce. Sometimes, he admitted. But I'm excited about what's next. I want to explore cooking more seriously. Serafina paused for a moment, looking at him thoughtfully. You have a talent for it, Landon. You should consider taking some culinary classes. Her words sparked something within him, a flicker of possibility that he hadn't fully considered before. Maybe I will, he replied, feeling inspired. As they combined all the ingredients into one pot, Landon couldn't help but admire how effortlessly Serafina guided him through each step. The aroma wafting through the kitchen was intoxicating, rich and savory with hints of thyme and basil. Just then, as they waited for the ratatouille to simmer, Serafina turned to him with a playful glint in her eye. Let's make this more interesting, she said mischievously. How about we have a little competition? A competition? Like what? Landon asked, intrigued. Let's see who can create the best side dish using whatever we have left in the fridge, she suggested. Landon grinned at the challenge. You're on. They both raced to the refrigerator, pulling out random ingredients, leftover pasta, some cheese, and a few herbs. The kitchen buzzed with energy as they scrambled to create their dishes while keeping an eye on each other's progress. Landon decided to make a cheesy pasta bake topped with breadcrumbs and herbs while Serafina whipped up a fresh salad with an elaborate vinaigrette. The playful banter continued as they worked, each trying to outdo the other while sharing laughter and lighthearted teasing. When it was time to taste their creations, they plated their dishes side by side on the dining table. The moment felt charged with excitement, both were eager to see whose dish would win. Okay, let's do this, Landon declared as they took their first bites simultaneously. Serafina chewed thoughtfully before breaking into a smile. Yours is surprisingly good. I didn't expect that from you. Landon laughed at her playful jab. And yours is fresh and vibrant. I think we both win here. As they enjoyed their meal together once more, Landon felt an overwhelming sense of connection with his aunt, a bond that was growing deeper than he had anticipated. It was more than just cooking, it was about sharing moments that would become cherished memories. After finishing their lunch and cleaning up together, Serafina turned serious for a moment. I'm really glad you're here this summer, Landon, she said softly. It means a lot to me. Me too, he replied sincerely. I've missed this, being around family and learning from you. The moment hung between them like an unspoken promise, a recognition that this summer would be unlike any other. The next day dawned bright and clear, the sun spilling golden light across the city. Landon Hawthorne woke up with a sense of excitement bubbling inside him. Today was not just any day, he and Serafina were heading to the farmer's market again, but this time, he felt a spark of anticipation that went beyond just cooking together. After breakfast, Landon met Serafina in the kitchen, where she was already preparing a list of ingredients for their next culinary adventure. We need to pick up some fresh herbs and maybe some fruits for dessert, she said, her eyes scanning the list with focus. Are you ready for another adventure? Absolutely. Let's see what we can find, he replied, feeling a sense of camaraderie growing between them. As they walked to the market, the vibrant energy of Chicago surrounded them. Street musicians played lively tunes, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air. Landon felt alive, soaking in the atmosphere. The market was bustling with people, each stall overflowing with colorful produce and handmade goods. "Look at those tomatoes," Serafina exclaimed, pointing toward a vendor's stand piled high with bright red fruits. "They're perfect for our sauce." Landon followed her gaze and nodded in agreement. "Let's grab some." He felt a thrill as they navigated through the crowd, picking up ingredients and chatting with local vendors. It was a delightful experience that brought them closer together. As they browsed through the stalls, Landon noticed a charming vendor selling artisanal cheeses. The vendor was an older woman with a warm smile and twinkling eyes. "You two look like you're planning something delicious," she said as they approached. We're making a fresh pasta dish tonight," Serafina replied enthusiastically. "Then you must try this aged cheddar," the woman insisted, handing them a sample. Landon took a bite and felt his taste buds explode with flavor. "Wow, that's incredible," he exclaimed. Serafina smiled at him, clearly pleased that he appreciated good food. "We'll take some," she said to the vendor, who wrapped it up carefully. As they continued their shopping, Landon noticed Serafina glancing at a nearby stall where a young man was selling fresh herbs. He had an easy smile and seemed to be charming everyone around him. Landon felt an unexpected twinge of jealousy as he watched Serafina engage in conversation with him. "Do you think we should get some basil?" she asked casually, but Landon could sense an undercurrent of flirtation in her tone. "Yeah, definitely," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady despite the strange feeling brewing inside him. After gathering all their ingredients, they headed back home, their bags heavy with fresh produce and exciting flavors. Once in the kitchen, they began to prepare their meal together again. This time, however, Landon found it harder to focus on cooking as thoughts of Serafina's interaction with the vendor lingered in his mind. As they boiled pasta and sautéed vegetables, he couldn't shake off the feeling that something had shifted between them since their cooking competition. The playful banter had morphed into something deeper, something that made him both excited and anxious. "Landon, are you okay?" Serafina asked suddenly, breaking his train of thought. "Yeah, I'm fine," he replied too quickly, realizing he might have sounded defensive. She raised an eyebrow but didn't press further. Instead, she continued stirring the sauce while glancing at him occasionally. There was an intensity in her gaze that made his heart race. Once dinner was ready, they set the table again on the balcony. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, a perfect backdrop for their meal. As they sat down to eat, Landon tried to push aside his earlier feelings and enjoy the moment. "This is amazing," he said after taking a bite of the pasta coated in rich sauce and topped with cheese. "You really outdid yourself." Serafina smiled warmly at him. "I couldn't have done it without your help." They shared stories over dinner, about childhood memories, dreams for the future, and everything in between. As laughter filled the air once more, Landon felt himself relax into their rhythm again. After finishing their meal and clearing away the dishes together, Serafina suggested they take a walk around their neighborhood to enjoy the cool evening breeze. Landon agreed eagerly, being outside would help clear his mind. As they strolled down tree-lined streets filled with twinkling lights from nearby cafes, they talked about everything: food trends, travel plans, and even silly childhood stories that made them both laugh until their sides hurt. However, as they turned a corner into a quieter street adorned with blooming flowers, Landon felt compelled to address what had been bothering him all evening. "Serafina," he began hesitantly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. What's on your mind?" she replied curiously. He took a deep breath before continuing. "I noticed how you were talking to that guy at the market earlier. I just wanted to know if you were interested in him or something." Serafina stopped walking and turned to face him fully. Her expression shifted from surprise to contemplation as she considered his words. "Honestly, he was charming and all," she admitted slowly. "But I'm not really looking for anything like that right now." Landon felt a wave of relief wash over him, but also something else, an undeniable urge to express how much he valued her presence in his life. I really enjoy spending time with you," he confessed quietly. Serafina's eyes softened as she stepped closer to him. "I enjoy it too," she said softly. "You've brought so much joy into my life this summer." In that moment, surrounded by blooming flowers under a starlit sky, everything felt charged with unspoken possibilities. They stood close together for what felt like an eternity before Serafina broke the silence again. Let's head back before we get lost in our thoughts, she suggested playfully. Landon chuckled but couldn't shake off the feeling that something significant had shifted between them tonight, a connection that went beyond family ties and friendship. As they walked back home side by side under the stars, he couldn't help but wonder what tomorrow would bring. The next day arrived with a sense of anticipation hanging in the air. Landon Hawthorne woke up feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. After last night's conversation with Serafina, he couldn't shake the feeling that their relationship was evolving into something deeper. He had spent the entire night tossing and turning, contemplating what it all meant. As he made his way to the kitchen, he found Serafina already there, preparing breakfast. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, mingling with the aroma of sizzling eggs. She looked up and smiled, her hair cascading in soft waves around her shoulders. "Good morning. Ready for another day of culinary adventures?" "Good morning. Absolutely," he replied, trying to keep his tone light despite the whirlwind of emotion swirling inside him. After breakfast, Serafina suggested they have a little fun in the kitchen today. "How about we challenge ourselves with a cooking competition again?" she proposed, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Landon felt a rush of excitement at the idea. "I'm in. What are the rules this time?" "We'll each create a dish using whatever we find in the pantry and fridge," she explained. "And then we'll have a taste test to see whose dish reigns supreme." They both laughed, and Landon felt a sense of camaraderie building between them as they prepared for the challenge. They set a timer for 1 hour and raced to gather their ingredients. Landon rummaged through the pantry and found some leftover chicken, rice, and an assortment of spices. He decided to make a spiced chicken stir-fry with rice, something simple but flavorful. Meanwhile, Serafina was busy selecting fresh vegetables and herbs, her focus unwavering as she meticulously planned her dish. As they cooked, the kitchen buzzed with energy. Landon chopped vegetables with determination while Serafina expertly sautéed her ingredients. They exchanged playful banter as they worked side by side, each trying to outdo the other. "Watch out. My dish is going to blow yours out of the water," Landon teased, stirring his chicken in the pan. "Not if I can help it," Serafina shot back, grinning as she tossed her vegetables into a sizzling skillet. The timer ticked down, and as they plated their dishes, Landon felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with anticipation. They set their creations on the dining table and sat down across from each other, ready for the taste test. "Okay, let's see what we've got," Serafina said playfully, eyeing his plate with mock suspicion. Landon took a bite of her dish first, a colorful medley of sautéed vegetables topped with a delicate sauce. "Wow, this is amazing," he exclaimed genuinely. "You've really outdone yourself." Serafina beamed at his compliment before taking a bite of his stir-fry. Her expression changed from curiosity to surprise as she chewed thoughtfully. "This is delicious too. You've really stepped up your game." They both laughed, enjoying each other's company as they savored their meals. But just as they were about to declare a winner, disaster struck. As Landon reached for his glass of water, he accidentally knocked over his plate, sending food flying everywhere, splattering against the wall and covering both him and Serafina in sauce. "Oh no," he exclaimed, bursting into laughter despite the mess. "I'm so sorry." Serafina couldn't help but laugh either as she wiped sauce off her cheek. "Well, I guess that settles it, neither of us wins this round." They both burst into fits of laughter as they surveyed the chaotic scene before them. In that moment of hilarity, something shifted again between them. It was as if all tension had evaporated into thin air. "Let's clean this up before we make an even bigger mess," Serafina said between giggles. As they cleaned up together, their laughter echoed through the kitchen. The atmosphere was light and carefree. It felt like they were sharing something special, an unspoken bond that had grown stronger since he arrived. Once everything was tidied up, they decided to take a break from cooking and head out for a walk around the neighborhood. The sun was shining brightly now, casting a warm glow on everything around them. As they strolled through the streets lined with blooming flowers and quaint shops, Landon felt an urge to open up about how he truly felt. The connection between them had deepened significantly over the past few days. He could no longer ignore it. "Serafina," he began hesitantly, glancing at her as they walked side by side. "I've been thinking about what we talked about the other night." She turned to him, curiosity evident in her eyes. What do you mean? I feel like there's something more between us than just family, he admitted carefully. I really enjoy spending time with you, not just cooking or hanging out, but everything. Serafina stopped walking and looked at him intently. Her expression was serious yet soft as she considered his words. I feel it too, she finally said quietly. His heart raced at her admission, it felt like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. Really? I wasn't sure if I was imagining things. No, she replied firmly but gently. It's real. In that moment under the sunlit sky surrounded by blooming flowers, Landon took a step closer to her. The air was charged with unspoken emotions, an electric tension that made everything else fade away. Can I kiss you? He asked softly, not wanting to overstep boundaries but feeling compelled by his feelings for her. Serafina nodded slowly, her eyes locked onto his with an intensity that made his heart race even faster. As he leaned in closer, their lips met softly at first, a tentative exploration that quickly deepened into something more passionate. Time seemed to stand still as they kissed beneath the trees. It felt like everything had changed in an instant, their relationship transformed from family ties into something beautifully complicated and exhilarating. When they finally pulled away from each other breathless but smiling widely, Landon couldn't help but laugh nervously at what had just happened. Well, he said playfully trying to lighten the mood again, I guess that makes me officially your favorite nephew now. Serafina chuckled softly before nudging him playfully with her shoulder as they continued walking hand in hand down the street, each step filled with newfound excitement for what lay ahead. The morning after their kiss, Landon Hawthorne awoke with a whirlwind of emotions swirling inside him. The sun streamed through the window, illuminating his room, but his mind was elsewhere, lost in thoughts of Serafina. What had begun as a summer filled with cooking and laughter had transformed into something much more profound. He felt exhilarated yet anxious about what lay ahead. After a quick breakfast, Landon found Serafina in the kitchen, her back turned to him as she prepared her usual morning coffee. The familiar scent of brewing coffee filled the air, but today it felt different, charged with an unspoken tension that hung between them. Good morning, she said cheerfully, turning to face him. Her smile was bright, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes that made his heart race. Good morning, he replied, trying to keep his tone light despite the weight of their recent encounter. About last night, Serafina held up her hand to stop him. Let's not rush into anything just yet, she said gently. We need to talk about what this means for us. Landon felt a knot tighten in his stomach. I agree, he said slowly. I just didn't want to ruin what we have. She nodded, her expression softening. I don't want to ruin it either. But we can't ignore what happened. They spent the morning cooking together, but the atmosphere was different now, tinged with an underlying tension as they navigated their new dynamic. They prepared a simple brunch of omelets and toast, exchanging glances but avoiding deeper conversations as they worked side by side. After they finished eating, Serafina suggested they take a walk to clear their heads. The sun was shining brightly outside, and Landon welcomed the chance to escape the charged atmosphere of the kitchen. As they strolled through their neighborhood, the vibrant sounds of the city surrounded them, children laughing, dogs barking, and the distant hum of traffic. But Landon's mind was focused solely on Serafina beside him. Do you remember when we used to go for walks like this when I was younger? He asked, trying to lighten the mood. She smiled at the memory. Of course, you were always so curious about everything, asking questions about the world around you. I guess some things never change, he said with a chuckle. I still have a lot of questions. Serafina looked at him thoughtfully. Like what? Like how we navigate this, whatever it is between us, he admitted hesitantly. She took a deep breath, stopping to face him fully. I care about you deeply, Landon, she began slowly. But I'm also scared about how this could affect our family dynamic and our lives. I get that, he replied earnestly. But I don't want to hide how I feel either. This summer has been one of the best experiences of my life because of you. Her gaze softened as she considered his words. I feel the same way, she confessed quietly. But we have to be careful. Why? Landon asked, feeling a mix of frustration and longing. Why can't we just embrace what we have? Because it's complicated, she replied, her voice trembling slightly. What if it doesn't work out? What if we end up hurting each other? Landon stepped closer to her, taking her hands in his. Life is complicated, Serafina. But isn't it worth taking the risk if it means being together? She looked down at their intertwined fingers before meeting his gaze again. He could see the conflict in her eyes, the desire to embrace their feelings battling against her fears. I don't want to lose you, she whispered. You won't lose me, he assured her firmly. No matter what happens, I'll always be here for you. In that moment, something shifted between them again, a mutual understanding that transcended words. They stood there for what felt like an eternity before Serafina finally nodded. Okay, she said softly. Let's take this one step at a time. Relief washed over Landon as he smiled at her decision. They resumed walking side by side, their fingers still intertwined, a small but significant gesture that signified their commitment to exploring this new chapter together. As they returned home later that afternoon, Landon felt lighter than he had in days. They spent the rest of the day cooking together again, laughter filling the kitchen as they playfully teased each other while preparing dinner. That evening, as they sat down for their meal on the balcony under a starlit sky, Landon felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for Serafina's presence in his life. They shared stories and laughter over dinner, each moment reinforcing their bond and easing any lingering tension from earlier. After finishing their meal and clearing away the dishes together, Landon turned to Serafina with a serious expression. I know we're taking things slow, but I want you to know that I'm all in for this, for us. Her eyes sparkled with warmth as she smiled back at him. And I'm all in too. As they stood together on the balcony overlooking the city lights twinkling like stars below them, Landon felt an undeniable sense of hope for what lay ahead, a journey filled with love and discovery that would shape both their lives forever. The following days passed in a blissful haze for Landon Hawthorne and Serafina Vale. Their relationship had blossomed into something beautiful, filled with laughter, shared secrets, and a deepening connection that neither of them had anticipated. Each moment spent together felt like a new adventure, and they embraced every opportunity to explore their feelings. As summer began to wane, the air turned crisp, and the leaves started to change colors, signaling the approach of fall. Landon and Serafina decided to celebrate their newfound bond by planning a special dinner together, a culmination of everything they had learned and experienced over the past few months. Let's make it a themed dinner, Serafina suggested one afternoon as they sat in her kitchen, brainstorming ideas. We could create a menu inspired by our favorite flavors. Landon's eyes lit up at the suggestion. How about a Mediterranean night? We can make hummus, falafel, and a fresh tabbouleh salad. Serafina clapped her hands in delight. That sounds perfect. And we can finish it off with baklava for dessert. They spent the next few days preparing for their dinner, shopping for ingredients at local markets and experimenting with recipes. The kitchen became their playground once again, filled with the sounds of chopping vegetables, sizzling pans, and bursts of laughter. On the evening of the dinner, Serafina transformed her dining area into a cozy Mediterranean oasis. She draped colorful tablecloths over the table and lit candles that flickered softly in the dim light. The aroma of spices filled the air as they cooked together, creating an atmosphere that was both intimate and festive. As they plated their dishes, Landon couldn't help but admire how effortlessly Serafina moved around the kitchen. She was in her element, confident and radiant. He felt grateful for every moment they had shared and excited about what lay ahead. Once everything was ready, they sat down at the beautifully set table, their hearts racing with anticipation. They toasted with glasses of sparkling water, laughter bubbling between them as they dug into their creations. This is amazing, Landon exclaimed, after taking his first bite of falafel. You really nailed it. Serafina beamed at his compliment. I couldn't have done it without your help. As they savored each dish, they reminisced about their summer together, the cooking lessons, the playful competitions, and the moments that had brought them closer. Each memory felt like a thread weaving their lives together in a tapestry of shared experiences. After finishing dinner, they moved to the balcony to enjoy dessert under the stars. The night sky was clear, with twinkling constellations overhead, a perfect backdrop for their intimate moment. As Serafina served the baklava, she glanced at Landon with a thoughtful expression. You know, she began slowly, this summer has changed my life in ways I never expected. Landon nodded, his heart swelling at her words. Me too. I came here thinking I'd just spend time cooking with my aunt, but I found so much more. She looked down at her plate for a moment before meeting his gaze again. I've been thinking about what happens next, when summer ends. Landon's heart raced at her words. He knew this conversation was coming but wasn't sure how to approach it. I've been thinking about that too, he admitted carefully. I don't want this to end just because summer does. Serafina took a deep breath as if gathering her thoughts. I care about you deeply, Landon. But I'm also aware of how complicated this is, our family dynamic and everything else. I understand, he replied earnestly. But I believe we can figure it out together. She smiled softly at him, her eyes shimmering with emotion. I want to believe that too. As they sat on the balcony surrounded by flickering candlelight and starry skies, Landon felt an overwhelming sense of hope for their future, a future filled with love and potential. Let's promise each other something, he said suddenly. What's that? She asked curiously. No matter where life takes us after this summer, let's always stay connected, he proposed. We can support each other through whatever comes next. Serafina nodded firmly, her expression resolute. I promise. In that moment, under the vast expanse of stars above them, Landon felt an undeniable sense of certainty wash over him. This was just the beginning of their journey together. As they finished their dessert and talked late into the night about dreams and aspirations, Landon realized that he had found something truly special in Serafina, a partner who understood him on levels he never thought possible. The end of summer might bring changes to their lives, but it would never diminish what they had built together during these precious months. They were ready to embrace whatever came next, together.